In this video, we're going to be talking about how our past affects our present by looking at our history. Now, the first thing to understand about this is you're doing something that's counterintuitive. You are leaning into painful things instead of away. Naturally, we lean away from pain. Put your hand on a hot stove, yank it away, cover it up, protect it, right? When you start taking a look at your past and all the hurts and rejections from your past, you're doing something that's counterintuitive. You're leaning into pain. And when we look at our history, we're looking for rejections. Rejections is the opposite of love, the absence of meaningful love. There are some obvious rejections like sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental, emotional abuse, shaming, being betrayed. Those are the obvious ones. There are subtle ones as well, like maybe a parent had high expectations for grades. Maybe a parent gave you the cold shoulder, silent treatment when they were upset with you. Maybe a grandparent compared you to one of your cousins. So there's some that's very obvious, some that are more subtle, but they all have an effect on us. So some people, when we start to take their history, they're like, this is a waste of time because I really don't have anything major in my past. Let's take a look at it this way. We're going to take two different people. We're going to take, first of all, let's take a guy, we'll call him Mike, all right? And this is his birth. This is his timeline. And now we have present Mike. And let's say that he has three big wounds and rejections from his past. Let's say he was molested by an uncle. Let's say he was physically abused by dad. And let's say his wife cheated on him. And to put a value on these wounds, let's say they weigh 3 pounds each, okay? So Mike is walking around with 9 pounds of wounds in his soul. Now let's take another person. Let's take somebody, we'll call her Mary, all right? Mary's birth. Now we have present day Mary. And let's say Mary's the one that's saying, we don't really need to look at my past because there's nothing back there. I wasn't molested, never been cheated on. Great parents, but let's say there's some little stuff back there. There's some subtle things, right? Like let's say mom had high expectations of her grades. Let's say dad had high expectations of her playing basketball and they would make subtle comments. Let's say a grandparent would compare her to a cousin. Let's say that she did bad on a test and a teacher kind of called her out in front of the class. And then we just got some other ones, so just some little things. And she would say, yeah, that happened, but it's not a big deal. Well, let's put a value on these rejections. Let's say they weigh 1 pound each. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Mary's walking around with 7 pounds of wounds in her soul. So just because you don't have, some major rejections back there, it doesn't mean that it's not necessary for you to take a look at your history. Now, let me say this. And let me be very clear, in no way am I encouraging anyone to adopt a victim mentality. A victim mentality would not bring you light. It would just keep you in darkness. We're going to have a whole video on the danger of having a victim mentality, and that is not why we take a look at someone's history. It's not to go back and really blame anyone. It's simply to see how we've been programmed. The nature versus nurture debate's been around for thousands of years, right? How did we get where we are? Is it because of nature, DNA, or is it nurture, past experiences? It's both. It really is both, but nurture plays into it. Like our past experiences shape us. How do they shape us? Okay, so when we're looking at rejections, what we're looking at is events and we're looking at themes. So event would be, let's say your dad physically abused you when you were 9. A theme would be mom always screamed and yelled at you when she was upset, right? So we got events and themes. And these are your rejections. From these events and themes, you develop a belief system. An example of a belief that comes from your past is, again, let's say dad physically abused you, and the belief is I'm worthless. I'm damaged. Let's say someone was sexually abused. They could believe I'm dirty, right? So these beliefs about self are created. And then our beliefs kind of shape and form our emotional life. And then we act and create attitudes. And this is how we cope with all this. So this happened, believed this, felt this, did this to get through it, and to try to make sure it doesn't happen again. So this is what you're looking for when you take a look at your history. Dad did this, I believed this, felt this, coped with it this way. I acted, coped, or I created an overall attitude. Now, some beliefs can actually sound positive. Some beliefs could be, I don't need anyone. I'm strong. I'm going to be independent. I'm not going to trust anyone again. I'm going to rely only on myself. Those sound better than I'm worthless. I'm not good enough. I don't measure up. But they lead everybody to the same place because all your trust is now in yourself, right? Instead of in God. So if your belief system went positive instead of negative, it doesn't mean that you escaped anything. It just means that you've now got a different set of issues to deal with than the person who has a negative belief system. And I could really make the case that the only reason you now have a positive belief system is because you were counteracting a negative belief. So Dad did this, I believe I'm not good enough, and you only believe that for a second, I will be good enough, right? And so you start talking yourself into I'm strong, I'm capable, and all these things, which again sounds really good until they start stacking up in the soul, and now all your trust in yourself, probably a control freak as well, all right? So this is what we're looking for. Children are a mirror, basically. Well, let me say that different. To a child, everything is a mirror. So a child has no idea and sense of self, but they're totally self-centered. So they don't know who they are, but everything says something about them. A child doesn't know how to be objective. Everything is subjective. So again, everything says something about the child. In other words, let's say Dad worked all the time, always traveled. A child did not say, you know, Dad's out there working hard for us to pay the bills. All a child knows is Dad's gone, work more important than me. That's all a child knows. Because again, a child is totally self-centered with no concept of self. Therefore, everything is a mirror. So you can't look at your history really from an adult perspective, because from an adult perspective, you'll say, well, I understand why Dad was gone. Great, I'm glad your perspective changed, but all of this still happened as a child and is still living back there somewhere. The main thing that we focus on is the belief system, because you cannot consistently live beyond what you believe about yourself. And a memory is basically a container that holds a belief. So in other words, the memories are not really hurting because they're not happening. What hurts is what you believe about the memory. So this is what we really like to focus on when we take a history. What happened? What did it cause you to believe about you? Because your belief system is really what shapes your life, right? And so we're walking around with all these beliefs about ourselves, about God, about life, about whatever. And these belief systems create this ceiling that we keep bumping our head up against as we're wanting to grow or we're wanting to change. It's been said that self-revelation precedes divine revelation. So before you know who you are, you first have to understand who you thought you were, but you're really not. That's why that before you can really receive the truth about your identity in a meaningful way, you need to start figuring out what are the lies that you believe about you. And they are lies. They are. They may feel true, but they are lies. It is what you believed about what happened, right? So this is why it's important that we take a history, because what we have is what we call lie-based pain. This is one thing that makes the proper counseling very effective. So if all you talk about is what happened, you may start feeling a little better because the event and themes get kind of desensitized, but healing does not happen until the pain that's coming from the lie is exposed. So may you hold your story close without letting it hold you back. If this video has been helpful, make sure you click that like and subscribe button, and thank you for watching.